Premiums in the stop-loss insurance segment continue to grow, reaching $26 billion in 2021 as more companies have chosen to self-fund their health plans. I'm Lori Chortis with AM Best TV, and joining us now to discuss a new AM Best market segment report on the segment is Doniella Pliss, Director, and David Lopes, Senior Industry Research Analyst, both with AM Best. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. Doniella, what are some of the features of self-funding that companies find attractive?
Self-funded plans are exempt from some of the major provisions of Affordable Care Act, such as minimum loss ratio requirement and health insurer fee. Health insurer fee is not an item in the past few years, but it's been a very hot button issue prior to that. And that led to popularity of self-funded plans following the adoption of Affordable Care Act. And that has become the major shift in commercial market prompted by the Affordable Care Act. But in the past few years, there's been an additional factor, because what we've seen in the past few years is the medical cost trend has moderated somewhat compared to what we've seen historically. And that became even more attractive for groups to go self-funded in order to be able to control the cost of healthcare.
Level-funded products are also on the rise. Doniella, what are they, and do they pose any concerns?
Level-funded product is kind of a middle ground for small groups between being fully insured and going completely self-funded. Under level-funded arrangement, the group pays a fixed amount each month towards the cost of claims, administrative expenses, and stop-loss premium. And that arrangement became very popular, and the carriers started offering more options for this level-funded product geared specifically towards small groups. But what's been concerning from a regulatory standpoint, there's been two major issues from the regulators been concerned about, and those the first issue is just the solvency and financial stability, because the smaller groups become responsible under this arrangement for paying the claims, paying first dollar claims. And another aspect is a little bit more broad-based, that as more companies, more small groups are leaving the community-rated small group pool for this level-funded arrangement, the pool becomes depleted, and there is some adverse selections, as the younger and healthier groups are more likely to be attracted to this level-funded option. And from a carrier's perspective, the level-funded product includes medical underwriting. So they have an incentive to offer even more attractive options to healthier groups, and that potentially depletes the pool even further. So what regulators came up with are various rules that can alleviate this trend, at least a little bit, and those include lower attachment points and higher deductibles for stop loss. Overall, over 25 states adopted some kind of a stop-loss regulation towards specifically small groups.
With these increases have come an increase in claims as well. David, what's driving the higher level of claims?
So the number of million-dollar claims has gone up nearly 50% since 2018 for some of these companies, while others have actually reported that the same high dollar value claims account for a quarter to nearly 30% of their total claims paid within the last 3 years. Naturally, this applies a lot of pressure on costs, but has also led to an increase in reinsurance as well. Even in 2019 alone, we've seen that the rise in the loss ratio was due to an introduction of new expensive specialty drugs, which then has resulted into an increased approval rate within the last several years. This year alone, we've already seen that the FDA has already approved a number of high-cost specialty drugs, I believe in a range of about 10 to 12 or so. And the annual cost for these drugs, for this year at least, has been less than those approved in the past years. However, we've seen that the diagnosis prevalence is much higher. And lastly, of course, as we know, prescription drugs continue to be on the rise. So something that carriers are doing to manage these costs are using carve-outs and also taking advantage of the manufacturer's assistance programs.
David, can it be a challenge for companies to continue to offer competitive premium rates to employees when claims costs are rising?
Yes, it can be a challenge for companies to continue to offer competitive rates. But what we've seen is that the premiums continue to be favorable. More and more companies are switching to self-insurance, and they're also purchasing stop-loss coverages to help maintain some of these benefit costs, as well as naturally in order to improve cash flows and also tapping into reinsurance as well. With the rise in the number of costly medical treatments, we've also seen that the number of stop-loss carriers have also been increasing. Naturally, this has resulted in premiums increase, particularly when we've seen that employers' stop-loss deductible has been unchanged. So in order to maintain the groups with this high leverage as elevated as it is, what we're seeing is that many stop-loss carriers are actually all offering alternatives with high deductibles. And in return, what is happening is that this will potentially help mitigate the carrier's risk and also minimize the renewal cost increase as well. Naturally, carriers are finding themselves to be walking a fine line between, trying to offer competitive rates to these groups, but also trying to accommodate for the high-cost members within each group.
Doniella, how does reinsurance come into the picture with stop-loss insurance?
When we look at the health segment in general, it is dominated by financially strong large carriers. So the use of reinsurance is pretty limited. But when it comes to stop loss, this is a notable exception because, as David already mentioned, there's been a significant increase in high-cost claims. And it is absolutely vital for carriers to be able to protect themselves against high claims, this $1 million+ claims or $2 million+ claims, in order to be able to continue to offer products. What we've seen in the last couple of years is that the number of claims that hit reinsurance on the stop-loss side has been consistently increasing, and the amount of reinsurance recoverables on carriers' balance sheets has been growing as well. In turn, that led to reinsurance raising rates, and the market hardened overall. So sometimes now it's hard for carriers to find this reinsurance protection. It is very possible that reinsurance will come up with some sort of limitations on how they will cover the claims that will come from these high cost therapies that David alluded to before, specifically cell therapies and gene therapies, that this amount of high dollar claims related to that specific area is expected to increase significantly over the next several years. But overall, insurance will continue to play a vital role in the stop-loss market because there are a lot of carriers that are smaller that play in the market and make the market competitive, and reinsurance protection is very important for them to be able to participate.
Doniella, David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
That was AM Best, Doniella Pliss, Director, and David Lopes, Senior Industry Research Analyst. For AM Best TV, I'm Lori Chortis.